Yes, we are still at Flow. I had to mix it up because, we've been here, we're all here, right? We don't need to welcome you anymore. We're still at Flow, an automation conference crafted for MSPs. And I'm doing that, or whatever. Troubleshooting your way through automation. A little bit about me. I'm the unofficial Roost stress tester, one of the OG ones from the beginning, before they actually had stress testing, before Brandon, who I can see, decided to take my spot. It's all good. I'm an MSP consultant. I was an MSP for many years before I joined MSP Geek, or LabTech Geek at the time, and then that actually is what turned me on to helping other MSPs, and I got really into it. Stayed at the MSP for quite a bit longer after that, and then decided to do my own consulting because if I'm doing it for free for the community, why not get paid for it, right? Avid community member, MSP Geek, like I said. I'm a fixer, not a builder, something I called out last time. The last time I was on stage at MSP GeekCon. There's something I want to call out here, though, with that fixer, not a builder thing. You'll hear from a lot of people who come up on the stage that you can't automate a process that doesn't exist. You'll hear from people who are operations people and say, like, I need to map it out. I need to have a spreadsheet, a process, a flow design before I can start figuring out what to automate. I am not that person. I've been referred to as chaos or chaotic. I hate planning. I would just rather do it than talk about it. And I cannot build anything from scratch. I am much better at iteration and fixing. And at core, I'm really just a technician. Like, one of the things that we have to do, how many technicians are in the house? Raise your hands if you're a technician at core, right? Some people. So as a technician, you are tasked to approach a system that you have no idea how it was created, you don't know how it works, and you have to figure it out. You're not the developer, and you don't know what the user did, and you're stuck between the person who built the platform and the person who broke it, and you have to fix it. And it all comes down to this process that we call troubleshooting. In the non-technical world, we call that critical thinking and problem solving to figure out what happened, how is it supposed to work, and go from there. And in reality, this is basically what I do when I build an automation. So I have here the troubleshooting scientific automation method. This is basically just the scientific method reformed for the troubleshooting method that I'm going to translate to how we do an automation. If you were in the CluckU bootcamp from the pre-day, one of the things that Eddie called out was we have to have a goal, right? Have a goal for the automation that you're creating. If you're going to do an automation for a password reset, your goal is pretty much in the name. He said it's a password reset, that's the goal. But that's not always that obvious, right? We heard from a lot of people here that you pick your automation based off your ROI that you're going to be getting, based off of where you're spending your time, what's the noisiest thing, what do you hate doing the most, dig into that and automate it and work on making that easier for you. It's not always clear what that goal is. So step one is the question or issue arises, we know we have a problem or process we hate doing. That's the first thing, right? The next thing is we want to perform data gathering. What's the goal here? What can I accomplish? What's going to be the main point that I can do to minimize the pain I feel from question one? All right, so that's the perform data gathering, identifying what it is that we're going to be doing in this automation. It doesn't have to be fully automated. It can be just a small amount. If someone has a process every single time where they're running through and they have to correlate data at once a month and it takes them 3 hours, you may not automate the entire process from beginning to end, but if you can automate just the correlation of data and then give it back to them, they can finish it up. And you turn a 3-hour process or a 1-hour process to 5-10 minutes, you still have a significant savings, right? So this is part of the point of don't look for automating something 100%, look for 80%, 20%. If you can automate just the pain points, come up with the basic goal you're going to be trying to achieve, identify what that is. That's what that perform data gathering is. Identify likely answers. That's my mode to just go do it. I have a goal. How can I do this one specific goal? What is the command I need to run to change this password? What is the command I need to do this data correlation? What is it that we're going to be doing? And how am I going to do that one specific thing? Right? Then I test for the data. I want to make sure it works. Right? I have to make sure it works, and I have to make sure that I can't break it. There's something called confirmation bias. It comes up all the time with problem solving. If you're testing for success, guess what? You're always going to succeed. It's not, well, not always, but most of the time you will. It's not a good test. When you're doing problem solving, you're going to try to do process of elimination. You have to start looking for failures. You're going to try to make it fail. And then when you see how it fails, you can then account for it. So when you're building your command that you have that's going to do the password reset, what happens if a password isn't provided? You want to test the automation without a password. What happens if the user doesn't exist? You want to test for a made-up username. You're going to look for ways to break the automation so that you can make sure that the process itself doesn't fall apart and build around it. So that's number 4. 5, analyze results and start iterating on that single command to handle those failures. And then 6 is repeat at scale. Now that you have the command done, build out the framework. How am I triggering it? Where is it coming from? Do I need a loop? What logic do I need to have? And things like that. I have a story that hopefully nobody here will remember it, will recognize what I'm about to say. I'm not going to give any names. Let's go back. Nobody saw that yet. You know what? Sure, let's go to that slide. You can goots around all you like, just don't goots it up, right? So if you're not familiar with Goots, it is the MSP Geeks mascot, and shame on you. If you do, then this is a quote I just came up with when I wrote the slide, not just now, even though it says now. The story that I have for you is I was doing consulting for them on Roost. I built out a Roost workflow that allowed them to automate offboarding and onboarding of employees. They're a fairly large MSP, several hundred employees, and they go through a lot of them all the time as they go through mergers and acquisitions, stuff like that, and they spend a lot of time doing these really manual garbage tasks to onboard and offboard, and instead of doing it for their clients, they want to do it for their own internal MSP. And so I did that for them, and the person who's supposed to run the automations promptly went and offboarded her own user account because she wasn't paying attention to the form fields. Goots around all you like, just don't goots it up. She literally tested the automation, and every single one of her accounts and all of her licenses were stripped, all of her groups were removed, everything that she had told me to do worked 100%. And then she was locked out and couldn't do anything. So that was fun. So yeah, that's really the lesson. Just test for things, make sure that you do things correctly, and test for breaking them so you can account for it. Also, start small, start with a goal, and then iterate from there. With that being said, is it in prod yet? This slide's only here just so it's a reminder that I can stop the presentation and flip over to sharing a screen. All right, here is a workflow that I started. And anyone here use Hoodoo as a documentation platform? I see a few hands, perfect. Anyone use Halo as a PSA? A couple hands here. Okay, this is something that I get asked a lot when, as a consultant, they go, well, we have Halo PSA. Halo PSA, if you're not aware of, comes with a bunch of AI things built in. Vectorization of ticket data, classification of tickets, being able to respond automatically, things like that. It also, in a unreleased version, future beta, will properly vectorize your knowledge base articles out of Halo and surface them up to you based off the ticket that you're working on, based off similarities. So there's a lot of things that you've heard today people are doing, or a future of AI that Halo has built in, or will have built in out of the box shortly. The thing is that the knowledge base editor in Halo, if you've ever seen it, it's kind of garbage. It's really, really difficult to work with. It's not great. And Hoodoo is significantly better. And people put their documents in Hoodoo. So they ask, how do we get our documents? Where should I put the documents? Should I lean into the garbage editor in Halo and use the AI features, or should I just give it up and use Hoodoo? Like, what's going to happen? Long story short, I decided, you know what? Here's the automation I want to accomplish. I want to take the documents in Hoodoo as they're being created or edited or whatever, and bring them into Halo. Halo is not going to be the front end of the technician. I'm basically defining, I'm on step 2 now, I'm defining what the goal is. The goal is that the document from Hoodoo has to exist inside of Halo. I don't need it to be in a specific folder, I don't care. Another use case, potentially, would be that clients are in the Halo self-service portal, and we want to surface a document to the client. So how do we do that from within Halo if the documents are in Hoodoo, right? So this could potentially answer that as well. But again, it comes back down to like all I care about is the article that exists in Hoodoo I want to bring over into Halo. And if you notice, I've got 3 or 4 or 5 different boxes here. Let's see if I can zoom appropriately. This working example number 1 is literally that automation. There's 3 steps. All it's doing is, number 1, it's starting here. This is a no-op or noop, depending on which methodology you subscribe to or subscribe to, whatever that word is. But this basically does nothing. I only have it here because I've turned it off for the next example that I've iterated over. This is doing, I'm just grabbing every article in Hoodoo. Now, I'm using a demo Hoodoo that's got only 10 or 15 articles, not a lot. So I don't need to filter it down. You may have to, depending on how many you have, or you may want to get more granular or whatever. But literally the next step is I'm just going to go and create the article that with the same name and with the same content, which is right here, that you can kind of see, I think. Let me zoom in there a little bit. There we go. And so I'm just putting the article content into the article in Halo, and that's it, I'm done. I also include a source on another line, so we can open the article directly in Hoodoo if we need to, once we're in Halo. And those 3 steps are basically all I did. I didn't do any looping or logic, like I said, and my goal was just how can I make this work? And so what I'm doing is here, I'm saying my article, I'm just grabbing one of the ones, the very first one that comes back. I don't care to loop. Once I have the full list and once it's working, I can come back and figure out my logic and I can figure out what I'm going to do with items and how many there are and pagination, all the other fancy. I don't care about that yet. I don't need to worry about it yet. My goal is how do I make my goal actually happen? And that's what I did on the first 3 steps. The next thing I did, working example 2, I was like, well, what I really want is, this is going to be fun trying to do this with my mouse. I should use the mouse that I borrowed from Michael, actually. That's a good idea. Oh, here we go. Hold on. Let's see. Does this work? Yeah, perfect. All right. So the next thing I was like, well, wouldn't it be great if this was real time? Like, why should I have to run this upon a schedule or a sync? Like, syncing is bad, right? Real-time APIs, webhooks, triggers, things happen immediately. That's what we want to happen. And I know that Hoodoo has an alert method where it'll fire off a webhook upon something being edited, created, or updated. So I created a trigger in Roost here that I can send that URL, put that URL in Hoodoo, and upon the article being updated, modified, and whatnot, created, updated, or deleted, I'll just fire off the webhook and then process that article. So I started building for that. Number 1 is I'm going to get the article based off an ID. Number 2, once I have that article, I'm going to get the folder. And I only did this because I'm already thinking about the future, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, right? So I know that at some point, potentially, I want to classify this article somewhere. Let me just grab the folder structure that this article is placed in, and then I'll deal with it later. If I want to do something with it later, I can. If not, I'll just leave it here or take it out, whatever. So this is just going to grab the folder that the article is in. And this loop I did in about 30 seconds, specifically just to loop over the subfolders. If there's a parent ID listed on the folder that I grabbed that parent ID. And if it's listed, I grab that parent ID. And every time I do that, I just append to the existing array a caret formatted folder list, right? So I just keep looping over it until it's 0, until there's no more parents. And then after that, I just exit and continue the loop. So that was just a small little detour I took out of it. But the key was I'm grabbing the article, and then guess what? I go back and I basically copied this existing action, and I just reused what I already had because I know that worked. And I just pasted that into Halo so that it comes directly from Hoodoo to Halo. Now, what is this here? What happens if the article already exists? Right? If it's an update as opposed to create, how do we not create duplicates inside of Halo? And again, these are challenges that this is not squared inside of a box because this came up later, right? These are challenges that you'll run into as you start building, right? It goes back to the point of I fix things. Right now I have a working automation. I had a working automation 5 steps ago when I had those 3 things. I just have to solve the next problem, right? I can fix things all day long. I just can't build them. So once I have a working thing, I can go fix the broken part, which was how do I trigger it? I'll trigger it real time. Now I have the problem of how do I match to an existing article? Well, I need to pull all the articles out of Halo first, which is what this action does. It pulls all the articles out of Halo, and then from there, I can match for the article based off of a name, based off an ID, based off of whatever I want to do. That's, again, for the future. The key is let's just get the articles in. We'll figure it out later. The next thing that I do, so when I'm using this action to create and update the article, I notice that I don't have every API parameter, which is fair because Halo has a lot of them. And as it tends to happen, if you start pulling, for example, the Roost action of Halo create ticket or action or things like that, where they have literally every API parameter available, the interface starts slowing down because it can't handle it. There's too many parameters. The Halo API is ridiculous, and literally everything is API powered, and that Swagger file is freaking huge. And so it's a lot to put in there. So instead, I'm like, well, I want to create this custom API action to create this KB article. Now, again, it's not like I know. This is the first time I'm doing this. This is the first time I'm touching these API endpoints. I have no idea what I need to do to make this work. But guess what? Roost does. So I can come back to the one I'm messing with, and if I click up here on the top right corner, I have the JSON body right here of the payload I need to send to, at the very least, get to the point I just was at a moment ago. This is literally the exact same thing. So if you notice, I'm just copying this and then pasting it into here. It's literally the exact same body. Right? So again, I'll show you that one more time. I'm inside of an action from Roost. I can just go to the top advanced editor, and I can grab the payload that's being made and turn that into a generic API call, which means I can then put whatever parameter I want inside of it after that. So I'm grabbing this, I'm pasting it into the generic call, just as the body. Now I can rewrite this to be prettier code. Obviously, this is a little bit ugly. This is just plain text that's pretending to be a JSON object. Usually, I would create the JSON object inside of a Jinja expression and then dump that to a JSON string using JSON_dump filter. But in any case, like this works. And the only thing I needed to do was I wanted to place the article somewhere. So what happens is that, for example, if should I run this live, guys? What do you think? How much time do I have? Do it live. OK. All right. So let's do this. Let me just swap this out. I'm going to set this enabled, and I'm going to convert this to disabled, and we'll publish that. That's your version control, guys, if you haven't seen it yet. Woo! Version control. OK. If I screw it up, I can always roll back now. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's keep growing up here. The other thing is, yeah, manual run is already set. So I'm just going to grab an article. Ooh, that's not what I wanted either. Let's see. Let me show you the hosted Hoodoo environment that I'm using. And don't look at my password. Yeah, this is the right one, I think. Let's just double check. Yeah, so I got a Hoodoo sync. So this is for the future, right? So these are like examples of what happened when I syncing articles from Hoodoo. But if I come here, I'm going to need, well, I don't need it. I can just delete these really quick. Delete that one. And delete this one. OK, so the problem is if I come here and I just go edit an article, so I'm going to be here, and I'm just going to go to this test document, and I'm just going to edit it, make some changes, and publish. Right? Let's see if this works. If I go to my results, we should see that it's firing, and it failed. Aww. OK. How do we troubleshoot this? What happens? What do we do? It failed on the loop. What happened here? Let's take a look. So I should talk while I'm doing this, right? This is the execution results. I don't know the summary of what's going on. So I'm diving down to the actual actions that the workflow is taking. And I'm looking for the error message. Generally speaking, you want to go to one level above the failure to find out what the error is. It's not a hard rule. There never is in tech. Everything always changes all the time. But that's where you start. So the other thing is that the context doesn't always load right away, so it's always good to refresh before you try doing anything, just so you get the latest context loaded up in here. In this case, I can see that it didn't have a mapped folder, it was null, and the loop failed because the error says none has no attribute folder. That makes sense because I'm trying to do this, and I should just pipe D at the end, really. But I think I can just bypass this if I just test this on a document that's inside of a folder. It won't be a problem. So let me just come in here and make a quick change to this article. And we'll just call it hoodoo sync as the change and publish that. So again, going back to the point where I said try to break the automation, I spent this time doing folder mapping, and then I never tested it on an article that was outside of a folder. Well, that was a failure, right? So we want to make sure we account for all scenarios. In this case, the workflow did succeed. I got through the folder looping, and then it went ahead and created a knowledge base in Halo that is ID number. Let's see if I can find it on here. 31, okay? So now, if I go to our knowledge base list, the name of this should be a definition of statuses, right? Hoodoo example. If I go here and refresh this, I'm not going to see it in any of these folders. It's not here. Where is it? Right? It's not listed up here. I can click on an article and I can do 31, and it'll load just fine. Right? This is literally the article that it literally you saw it take like less than 30 seconds to get that article into Halo. But there's no folder for it. It's not going anywhere. And so that was one of the things I had to fix. So if I go back and look at this workflow, the change that I made here was because I needed to add in the folder to where to place it to inside of Halo. Now, this is where things start to get interesting, because you can get lost in the weeds on this thing. Right? You got to remind yourself on what is the goal here. The goal is not to have a one-to-one build out of what I have in Hoodoo to what I have in Halo. The goal is to have the information inside of Halo. It doesn't have to be in the same folder, it doesn't have to be in the same place, it doesn't have to be structured the same way, as long as the article exists, especially if the technicians are going to be using Hoodoo as their primary interface. I don't care where it goes in Halo, right? I just need the AI engine to have access to it so that it can source the data for the article. So in that case, for when you're working on a ticket, so in that case, I went and I created this Hoodoo synced folder right here, and I decided for right now, right, minimum amount of work to accomplish the goal I'm looking to do is just place all articles into one folder. What can happen in the future and what I could potentially do with that folder mapping I'm building out is I can go back and say, well, maybe I can create the folder structure in Halo that Hoodoo has, right? That way I can create the folder and then I can place the article into that folder. And then suddenly I do have a one-to-one design. But that's what the folder mapping is there for us to potentially use later on, and we can do something like that. But for right now, my goal is to just get it in here. And so all I did is I went to DevTools. This is one of the reasons why I absolutely love Halo, is because the API is literally the same API that they use. So I can come to the network tab here, and all I'm going to do, I'm just going to clear what's running. I'm just going to place this into FAQ lists, or was what they call it. That's the folder. I'm going to place it into the Hoodoo synced folder, and I'm just going to save that article. And I'm just going to capture in the network tab, if I can find it, the API parameters that were sent right here, FAQ lists, right? This is literally all I have to do to add to the folder being created to the article being created in order to place it into the right folder. So I grab this, and you can see that right here. Let me zoom in a bit. FAQ lists, ID 5, name Hoodoo synced. It's the same exact thing. I just grabbed from DevTools, I threw it in here. I spent almost no time figuring this out because between Roost and Halo, all my work is done for me. I'm just putting the pieces together, right? So with that being said, if I were to go close this and let's flip this back around, right? Let's say this is successful on success, and we'll turn this back off again by saying you can't run, condition has to be false, which is never going to happen, hopefully, unless the world is upside down or we're in Australia, I guess. Took a second. You guys got there. It's cool. All right, so with that being done, I can actually go to a different article. Let's say we'll go to one inside of another folder so we don't run into the same failure. We'll go to an analysis of OpenAI integration with Hoodoo, and I will just edit this, make a change. And this was not a completed document, so I'm just going to say someone should finish this at some point. And we'll save that. Now, again, if our execution summary runs correctly, we should see that it failed. I don't know why. Why did it fail? Didn't like something that I did. Something with the JSON inside of the HTML was not appreciated here. Did I? I didn't change anything inside of it. So now I can sit down and troubleshoot the actual payload to find out why it's not reading it correctly, or I can just try a different article, because this is a pretty complicated one. Let's try this one. Let's see if this is, I feel like it's not going to be any easier. Let's try this one. This is just images and stuff. Let's see what happens. Let's try again. No, really doesn't like me. Okay. All right, guys, we're gonna figure this out. Let's see. It says that after parsing value and unexpected characters are countered, path is your description line 11, position 34. So if we were to go to here, not that one. It's got to be in the description, which is going to be, let's load the context up. So in the article, that's the folder tree. Here's the article. This content. How do we get this so I can get actual line numbers? That's the problem that we have. Oh, I know. Let's go to the Ginger Live editor. Let's try to use the tools inside of Roost. Line 11. Character 34. Can't see anything that would be obviously breaking it. Yeah, sure. Sorry. I can zoom in. How about that? Well, so I thought so too. And this is like part of the troubleshooting process, right? Like I can see a bunch of characters there that would potentially break it, but looking above, there are characters, like there's a double quote here, right? We have the same P class here. It didn't break it there. And so it's calling out line 11, which means something else besides for this is doing it. It's not a comma, obviously. It could be this, or the semicolon, or it could even be a character we can't even see, technically. But let's do this. Let me try it. Let's just troubleshooting, back to basics. What happens if I make a brand new article, right? So I'm just going to put very basic. And let's see, is it really an issue with the content of the article, or is there something else wrong with the workflow, right? So that's the question I'm looking to solve right now. Let's go back here and see if that succeeded. Yep, we got 2 succeeds. I don't know why. Oh, I think the creation is blank, and then the edit is the content, because it creates the article first in Hoodoo, and then it generates the actual, whatchamacallit. So now that we have this, we can see that it did successfully create this. With ID, I'm going to guess 32, but I don't need to know the ID, because now, if I go to this refresh Halo, I should have 2 articles like that. So yes, the workflow works fine to an extent, right? Just don't break it, obviously, duh, like what's wrong with you guys? No, I mean, we have to make sure that we look for those places it's going to break, and then account for how to handle it. There's probably going to be some sort of encoding I'm going to have to do, or replacement of characters, figure out what's going on so that I can bring it over correctly without having it break the JSON string. Something else that I can do is, again, from a troubleshooting perspective, I can come back to the failure, and I can take that entire JSON object that failed, and I can look for what's wrong with it. Can I copy? It's at the end, right? Yeah. Copy this entire string. and just pull up like json.lint.com or whatever, right? Look for validating that JSON object, because it does need to be a valid JSON object, and where it's broken. And it looks like it's broken everywhere. Line 11, it's expecting end of file, but it received a curly brace. So yeah, line 11. Okay, so it is the actual, as soon as it opens up, it's the double quotes. Yeah, whoever called that out. All right, so now now that I know that, I can just come back here and replace the double quotes with single quotes as part of the Jinja expression, just by doing, let's see, double quotes, and you have to like reverse the ones that you're doing, right? So like that. That should do it, I think. I'm not zoomed in again. You guys need to stop me. All right, so I'm using a filter, a Jinja filter here, and I'm inversing the quotation marks, right? I can't double quote and put a double quote inside of it. It's going to close the double quote. So I have to put a single quote, double quote inside of that, and then I'm replacing it with a single quote. So I have to put double quotes and the same quote inside of that, which is what this looks like, even though it's a little bit eye-hurting if you try staring at that too long. So now that I've done that, I can close and publish this, and let's see if I'm successful at, I don't know, doing a quick troubleshooting and solving of, no, this one we already know worked. Let's go back to example documents. It was this one that failed, right? Let's just edit that. Without breaking things, if I can spell correctly. Nope, I can't do it. Okay, there we go, almost. Let's go ahead and publish that. And let's go back and take a look at our workflow again. And that failed still. So we got to figure out, again, what it is that's causing it. The same thing. We just continue iterating over again and over again, and then we go from there. Yes, question. Okay. Oh, nice. Okay, but how is that going to come out when it's being rendered in HTML? I mean, we can try it, but that's what I would. Yeah, because you're talking about probably when you're, like the URL encode is good for a URL, but when you're displaying the HTML, it's a different kind of encoding. Yeah.
Hey, Mendy, I just want to give you a time check, 8 minutes, just
okay.
in case you want to take Q&A. I didn't know how much else you want to cover as well. And I didn't mean to be rude to you in terms of making this point, but...
Here, let me help you out. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm good for questions. I got it, 80% working. That's the goal, right?
Absolutely. Questions? We got a question right here. Can we have another mic ready, please? Thank you.
Hey, Mendy. My name is Mendy with Onward. We're MSP out of Southwest Florida, unicorn curator. Very impressed with this workflow where we use a different platform for documentation. It's a product guide. We're really happy with the way that the KBs are structured.
Yep.
Is there a way to do like an iframe or an embedding within a Halo KB? And is it possible to vectorize, I guess, those types of articles?
So the problem with iframes is you're going to run into authentication. So if your documentation platform supports the iframe and you're already signed in and or the authentication can be passed through and then it can load or it's anonymous, like any of those things are true, then yes, you can put an iframe inside of a Halo article because all it is really just HTML. Just go drop into the code, put an iframe, and it should load. But again, there was a lot of complications with iframes, and AI is not going to vectorize it. It's going to vectorize the iframe HTML code and not the end result. One of the things that I didn't get to go into too far was, again, we can put the articles into one folder in Halo called synced folder for AI to process. And then the manual part comes in. Well, let's say we want to share these articles out with our clients. Well, you don't want to share all of them out. And so upon you discovering an article that you want to share out, you move that article independently into its own FAQ list. And again, the automation can just account for that so it doesn't overwrite it if it's not in that folder, right? So that way, most of your articles are coming into one folder without the structure. Your technicians are using your documentation platform in the structure that they like. And if there's something that you need to share with your client, you're putting it into the client's shared FAQ list inside of Halo that's visible to them, and that's it. And so that part's still manual, but you still get a lot of other good things. You don't have to manually recreate the whole document. The AI stuff will still work, and things like that. So, yeah.
Other questions? I got one for you before we let you off the stage.
Yeah, go for it.
It's a classic Joe Dumb question. I come from the world of WordPress, and I almost fell. I come from the world of WordPress, right? And I'm familiar with WordPress plugins. Mm-hmm. And, do you foresee a day where these workflows, as you're building them, aren't shared just internally with the MSP or just with one customer, but the workflows become publicly available and aggregated and for sale in a repeatable, scalable, global way?
I mean, I feel like I got to put my Aaron Chernin hat on and start talking about things I'm not allowed to talk about yet. But no, I mean, Roost specifically has a marketplace, a crate already. It's something that they're able to package up automations and workflows that can then be shared out through multiple MSPs, kind of like what you're talking about, almost like an app store of sorts. Again, I'm not giving anything away, but I'm just going to say the words kind of like an app store, I guess. With that being said, I mean, yeah, I feel like we can, like, the things that I'm doing in Roost, I've built like a fax application that's available for the public, essentially, to be able to send faxes. Like, anyone can use it. It's not contained within Roost. I added to Halo the ability to track packages. So when we ship boxes out, we can update the ticket real time once the box is delivered. It just checks it every 15 minutes or whatever schedule you put up. I've done SMS texting added into the Halo platform or really enhanced the existing functionality. Again, it's not limited to Roost. Essentially, Roost is like a backend that's invisible. And so you can really package and build solutions that are available for use. And then the things that you do build, like I said, can be packaged up right now by The Rock or Roost in the backend into crates on their marketplace. That may change in the future. Who knows? I'm not the one saying anything.
Thank you.
Sure. No problem. All right, thanks, guys.
I didn't mean to go into a gray area. How about another hand?